Depression is, it's almost a daily occurrence, and I can say that suicidal thoughts, if not daily too in the hospital, at least weekly.
Usually when people talk about depression, people talk about, oh, I'm depressed, I couldn't go there, I'm depressed, something happened, my football team lost, So depression in itself is just a word that describes how you feel, sad about something.
During the COVID-19 lockdown and all the months following the lockdown, they told us that the problem became worse. So many more people call their hotline as they deal with huge problems. So, a lot of these problems are, for example, of course, economic and financial problems. But also university students who are not able to attend their lectures and workshops anymore. Contacts between people are interrupted. You cannot always visit your loved ones. And so there are a lot of problems which have been in a way, which became worse during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, doing this project right now is so important, not just for us, but also I think we will find a much bigger audience now who is interested in listening to what we are discussing.
The family history of depression, maybe somebody's mother has depression, increases the risk of that person having depression.
It has been ongoing for a very long time. Our forefathers, they've always found a way around it, probably some traditional ways of managing it, of treating some mental related disorders. But now that there is more modern ways of addressing it, there is more awareness about it, and probably a little or a reduction in the level of stigma. There's increase in the reportage of all these mental related issues. So that's why it seems more common or more popular now than it was before. And
in the case of Nigeria, systematically, the material well-being of the average Nigerian had been on a downward slide, and that is because government had actually failed in its social contract. It's not something that started today, it started gradually, but we can say that gradually we are getting to a precipice where you find that even those who are working, so to speak, many of them are frustrated because when, for instance, the so-called take-home cannot take you home, it stops you at the bus stop. If one doesn't have a good support system or enough moral inhibitions, there will be a tendency for that person, to begin to think about, we call it in sociology, suicide ideation.
So there are also some other psychosocial stressors that could come into play when we talk about the causes of suicide. Some people because they have lost a job, some because they have lost a loved one, and some because they can't even cope with whatever situation that is happening in the country. That's when we talk about the different types of suicide. So there are actually a lot of different causes of suicide depending on the particular individual.
Widower had lost his wife a couple of years prior, very lonely, 3 daughters, 2 married, 1 late, had an accident at some point, so he lost one, and so he was living alone. Very dedicated church member, in fact an elder in the church, very respected, but he was going through all this, but he didn't know how he was going to share with anyone. One of his problems had been, how can I, a church elder, go to church and not even be able to drop offering? I'm so respected. That year, so the family he was working with as a driver had relocated to Canada, and he had saved up, an amount of money, a substantial amount of money, whilst he was working with this family that relocated to Canada. And at the point I was seeing him, he was down to maybe 44,000. And that's what he had been living on because he couldn't get another job. A friend invited him to Enugu, so he went to Enugu. And whilst in Enugu, in the dailies, he saw the advert or something that talked about stopping, and that was how he found stopping hotlines. Despite going to Enugu, he was very suicidal, and he was already making his plan of how he was going to end his life. So he saw the advert and then he sent a message to the stopping hotlines saying that this was, I think, November last year or October last year, and he had sent a message saying he was going to return to Lagos very soon, but his plan was to go to Osun State, that's his state of origin, where he's going to take his life. So he wanted to go back home so that nobody would have to transport his dead body. He didn't want to burden his, his children with that responsibility. And then he came back to Lagos. But by then we had contacted him and told him, once you get back to Lagos, please get in touch with us and we'll take it up from there. So on the third day, he came into the shopping office. We had a conversation. He detailed all his struggles and all his experiences. Said he was down to 44,000 and that when the money was 5,000, he was going to leave Lagos and go to Osun and take his life. At least that way, no one would have to, they would probably just meet him in his father's house where he has a house in Osun State, and then they can bury him there. He had a suicide note written in his pocket, which he carries all over the place. His name, the next of people, the contacts to call immediately, written in red biro, so that if you find my body at any point, just call these people. They know what to do. All right. What else is interesting about him? So I asked him, how do you plan to do this? People would have suicidal thoughts, but not everybody has a plan. He already had a plan. And right then and then, in a nylon in his bag, which he always carries about as well. Who knows, maybe he even carried it to Enugu and the friend didn't even know. Right there in his bag, he had, a poisonous substance, and he had his shaving cream, which he planned to mix together whenever he was ready. And that day I asked him, can I buy these things off you? And I told him, I won't buy your shaving cream, but can I buy this other substance off you? And that was what I did. I bought it off him. And we did other things. And I asked him, what's the plan? And he says he needs a job. It's a funny story, one that would give me goosebumps whenever I recall it. And incidentally, that day, there was, I think there was an interview going on in Luth. And I ran to one of my bosses who I knew was going to be, in charge of the interview. And I said, Chief, in the medical profession, we usually call ourselves like that. Chief, is there anyone, can I ask somebody, because he's also very, very interested in stopping affairs anyway. Can I ask somebody to speak to you about this and that? And that was it. He went through the interview process and he got a job. And I can tell you right now, currently, that he works in Luth. It was a beautiful story. It was a beautiful ending, and we have stories like that, many others.
So usually when you hear that, somebody took their life by suicide, the people think, no, we didn't know, we didn't see any signs. Usually there are signs. The signs are just things that we shrug off every day because we just think that person is being, it's just titty, it's just gamela, it's just, they think it's just normal reactions. First and foremost, people who are depressed, for example, will exhibit different behaviors from what they're normally used to. So if the person is usually very jovial, you might find the person not as jovial as they used to. Sleep patterns are disrupted. The person doesn't sleep as well as they used to, or they sleep more often. Appetite changes. It might be total loss of appetite. The person is not eating as much as he or she wants to.
Out his hazards. We are psychiatrists, we are mental health practitioners, and they bring in a patient who is very aggressive, rushes in and everything. You have to have a way of handling it, and occasionally they may become very aggressive and you suffer from that. Like I've been slapped before by a patient because of the belief that I want to harm him, but then it's part of the whole profession. However, we have so many things in place to prevent these hazards from happening. So yes, that is it.
See, we used to be a communal society where people share problems together and share whatever they have. But today you begin to see people who believe that, I call it the principle of Igbo, I before others, okay? Who believe that there's no point, okay? The resources are thin, okay? Why should I share with the next person? So you find that alienation. If children find hope in their parents, in their teachers, in their friends, there's no way they will commit suicide.
You might think theater does not have such strong impact, but it does. for me, is a good platform to share these things. You know, when you're looking at people, when you see people in real life, or you are watching them on stage, you are imagining yourself, oh, this could be me. You know, for me, I know there are other platforms and all of that, but theater for me can go a long way, because theater can pop up anywhere. Can pop up in the market, at the bus stop, even a proper theater will do. So for me, it can work. It can work.
This lady, the boyfriend, probably jilted her, and then she felt she couldn't cope again, and then she was brought to the hospital. She was counseled, and then she actually saw that there's still a lot to life than taking one's life after a breakup. She too, she's coming around, and then she's doing well. She's just got a new job, and it's been good ever since.
And say, what are the things I'm going to do today? Part of your daily routine that has been deliberately crafted, like it's a master plan of how your day is going to run. Even though you're going to show up at work, in the morning when you wake up, maybe the first thing is you want to take a shower, you want to brush. Afterwards, maybe you want to take a few minutes of exercise. It might not be anything serious, maybe just some stretches before you leave the house. And then maybe you look at yourself in the mirror, and then you reconnect with yourself. Looking at yourself, ask yourself very deep questions, like you're trying to connect. How are you doing today? How are you really doing today? And try to answer yourself honestly. Oh, I mean, there's something bugging me. When we learn to ask ourselves these questions, and we learn to find the answers to what our troubles are, you're more likely to be able to solve it.